Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. I was never told by my adoptive parents that I was adopted until 2 years ago during Christmas when I was gifted one of those ancestry DNA tests by a cousin of mine so that we could take them together. What was more surprising was that even though my cousin gifted it to me right in front of them, their reaction was pretty blank for someone whose child was just going to find out that they had hidden their adoption from them. The freak out and red flags began once I did get the results. I was shocked to see that I shared no DNA with my cousin or my parents. It took me about 2 weeks, lots of tears, and lots of courage to build up to approach the two of them and talk to them about this. And oh boy, any expectations of comfort that I had, hoped, just vanished as they both screamed at me for taking the test. They went off about, since I took the DNA test, I clearly thought they were bad people, and so much more that I don't even want to bother recalling. They yelled at me so much that for the first time in all these years, I had an argument with them because they kept refusing to hear my side of the story. The blow up was hard and loud, so much so that I had to leave home to live with my grandparents. I stayed there for about a week until one day my parents drove here and picked me up. I was scared. I just had this weird intuition inside me that said that I wasn't safe here, but still, as a 16-year-old, what choice did I have? So I went with them, and surprisingly, they apologized to me. They explained to me how the reason that they hadn't told me about all of this was because they didn't want me to go through any emotional distress. How they weren't in contact with my parents, so they thought it wouldn't be of any use if they even told me about it and other things like that, which convinced me that they were right. Now that I think about it, these all should have been red flags, but a 16-year-old, me, who really thought highly of her parents, just forgave everything that took place and moved on because, keeping this situation aside, my parents were really good people to me. They had done everything for me. Everything I laid my finger on and said I wanted was handed to me. They truly treated me like their princess. So I slowly start to try and forget about the thoughts of wanting to meet my biological parents and know my background because every time I would ask my adoptive parents about them, their response would be pretty much the same, either a no, we don't know anything about them, or if they gave you up for adoption, then they're clearly bad people. So after a couple of months, I had just given up, even though I had started to struggle with my mental health a lot with identity issues and the beginning of my parents' overprotectiveness towards me. I wasn't even given the access to therapy because of my parents' firm belief over the fact that therapy doesn't work. So I started to try to move on from the situation until a couple of weeks back. It's been about 2 years since the whole situation took place, and I had almost gotten over everything. Of course, the thought of everything still dwindled over my mind every once in a while until this happened. You see, I had been cleaning our basement to make space for a small renovation we were going to be doing there. I was sorting through the boxes and throwing away most of the things when I came across this box. Opening this box was like the Pandora's box because through it, all the disgusting lies that my parents were making up escaped. It consisted of my birth certificate and adoption documents and a couple of letters. I quickly took out my phone as soon as I realized what I'd gotten my hands on and took multiple pictures before putting the box away and pretending like I hadn't come across any of this. It was only when I got into my room and started tearing up as I went through document after document and letter after letter. I stood there with all the information of my biological parents that I ever needed, which my adoptive parents kept on telling it didn't exist, and it would only take me a couple of hours to approach them. I just knew I had to because after all these lies, I knew I needed to get their story out on my own. So I looked them up on Google and found a website which was used to advertise a business which I assume belonged to my dad. It also matched the picture affixed on my adoption documents, and so I decided to email him with the address provided on the website. I explained to him who I was, why was I emailing, and how he didn't have to email me back if not comfortable. I then waited patiently, and after a week of waiting and not getting a response, my hope went pretty down. I tried to distract myself until a couple of days back. I got a response from him. When I saw it at school, my hands almost trembled, and I returned home to open it in my room. Good thing I did, because oh boy, reading that felt like a roller coaster. The email started off by giving me a lot of love. I think it was written by my biological mom and dad both. They asked me how I was and other things. The real kicker started when I started talking about how it was a shocker that my parents did allow me to email them after all their apparent efforts to contact me. Reading this left me astounded because this completely contradicted what my parents told me, that my adoptive parents never tried reaching out to me. They only spoke briefly about my parents because they were so happy to find out that I was okay. They told me how they were looking forward to talking to me more on the phone or through a video call. So that's what we have been doing. They honestly seem so normal. I even had the opportunity to speak to their son, who is the sweetest guy. It's like these people still consider me a part of their own because of how calm they seem. It's starting to click to me how much my adoptive parents lied to me, and it is almost concerning how hard they tried to keep me sheltered. Looking at my biological parents, I feel like I need to run from my adoptive parents ASAP, because it is now clicking to me how unhealthy their protectiveness towards me has been. What should I do here? AITA for feeling this way? After about 2 weeks of talking through calls and texts, I decided to meet up with my biological family. We decided on a restaurant and decided to meet during the evening. Before anyone brings up concerns regarding my safety, I had told my boyfriend of 3 years, along with a couple of friends from school, about my whereabouts. I had given them the addresses, pictures, as well as all contact details of my biological family, but who knew it would be my own adoptive parents that I would need to be protected from. You see, as I was leaving for the meeting, I had told my mom I was going to see my boyfriend, and although I know this was wrong, I know it wasn't bad enough that my mom would legit scream at me. Yes, that was her reaction to me saying bye to her. I immediately knew something was wrong, and she revealed that to me as she started berating me for betraying her and my dad, for leaving them for my biological family. My anxiety went through the roof as I realized my mom had been snooping through my phone all this time. I stayed quiet throughout the time she was yelling until the point she dragged me by the arm and started tugging on my bag. This is when I knew I needed to protect myself. So I ran to my room. As I was trying to lock it, I noticed that the lock on my door had been taken out. What the hell? I started panicking more than ever. I had less than a minute to do something because I knew my mom had found me, and so I called my boyfriend. Thankfully, he picked up and I told him to please come home with the cops, and that is exactly what he did. As my mom kept yelling at me, within about 30 minutes, my boyfriend was here with the cops. I knew I had to file a report, and so after showing them the mark on my arm, caused due to the harsh tugging, they decided to take in my report. I packed up my things as they investigated my mom, who didn't even deny what she did, but wept bitter tears as she talked about how she only did this to protect me and how I was just letting them, referring to my biological family, win again. I am freaking out now. I'm currently at my boyfriend's place typing this. My phone has been blowing up with messages from my relatives telling me how horrible of a daughter I am for replacing my parents. I am utterly confused because that was never my intention. As for my biological family, I informed them of the situation. We have shifted the meet up date for a couple of days after. One thing that did make me feel weird is when I told my biological dad about what my mom did, he had a reaction that said, "This isn't the first time she did something like this." So, this meeting is becoming increasingly important to me because I feel like I will soon be receiving answers to a lot of unanswered questions. I posted on this subreddit 3 months ago. I was at a very difficult place and honestly still am, but at least I have gotten the opportunity to be able to work through it with therapy and familial love and support instead of having to label over possessiveness and being sheltered as love. So, a couple of days after I had moved in with my boyfriend, I decided to meet up with my biological parents. Meeting them felt surreal, felt like a dream that would never come true. Saying that they were far from what my adoptive parents had described them to me as would be an understatement. They were the sweetest, kindest people. They literally started off by apologizing to me, telling me that they never wanted to leave me by my adoptive parents. Then they gave me the backstory, the events that led up to them having to give me up for adoption, and by the time it all ended, I had started to cry like a baby. My adoptive mom and biological mom are actually cousins. My adoptive parents are much older than my parents, so when my parents gave birth to me at a ripe age of 18, they didn't have the resources to take care of me, but they knew they wanted to be parents and had started to work minimum wage jobs and such. During this time, my mom's cousin and her husband, my adoptive parents, also started helping them financially. My parents only saw this as the help she was giving her out of love, not knowing their malicious intentions behind it, even after how much my adoptive mom would cry over not being able to conceive kids to my mom. Well, this goes on for about a year until my biological dad gets into a car accident that causes him to get into an indefinite coma. Now, it becomes very sure to my mom that she won't be able to take care of me, and my adoptive parents, being the manipulative people that they are, took full advantage of my mom's vulnerable state and told her that they would adopt me and we would have a sort of an open adoption where my biological dad and her will be able to see me. Well, this never happens. As soon as they adopted me, they completely cut off my parents, and my mom's side of the family also sides with my adoptive parents because they were rich and financially stable. My mom, who literally had no money to take care of herself, let alone hire a lawyer, just decided to try her best to move on from the situation, hoping that someday I will reach out to them. Even after my dad had gotten out of his coma, it took him about 2 years to be able to walk normally. And by the time he completed his college and started earning good money, it had been about 7 years. There was no way the court would ever grant them any custody. I started crying at that point while both of my biological parents teared up, apologizing to me over and over, telling me how they wanted to make it up to me for putting me through so much pain. I hugged them tightly and we just sat there for a while, catching up with each other's lives. After that dinner, I met them multiple times at their home, where I met my brother, who is a couple of years younger than me. We have a lot in common, and all four of us always had a blast when we met. I'm in the process of moving in with them before I leave the state college. As for my adoptive parents, they have tried relentlessly to meet me, showing up at my boyfriend's place, my biological parents, my school, and everywhere. They had also tried to file a report to the cops for kidnapping, and after it was proven that I was 18 and had moved out of my house with my own will, I got the chance to get a restraining order against them. Although it hurt to file one, I knew I had to. So this is where I'm at currently. These 6 months have really turned my life upside down. I have lost countless of my relatives, but the fact that I have met my people means the most to me. Thank you all for your advice. NTA, your biological and adoptive parents both seem suspicious. Why are they trying so hard to protect you from your biological family? Why are they spreading so many lies towards them? I would suggest you tread carefully with both. NTA. I would become extremely suspicious if my parents lied to me about things like these, regardless of how good of people they are. I would also inform a couple of close friends of this situation if they're becoming so possessive. just in case. I'm a 46-year-old female, live on a farm with my husband and 2 kids. My brother, Dwayne, 38, has a daughter we'll call Emma, 15. My brother and his wife have always been very quick to compliment me on the behavior of my children. Angela, my sister-in-law, confides in me about Emma's troubles. Emma is very reckless, shoplifts, drinks, has an older boyfriend, and gets into fights at school. She's also constantly suspended in and out of school. Over the summer, Emma had a run-in with the law, and they were told that if she didn't straighten up her act, that she would end up in prison. They were suggested and tried therapy, but Emma would never participate. Dwayne asked me if I would take Emma and teach her some responsibility. The arrangement was that I would take Emma for the final month of summer, enroll her in school here, and keep her for the first semester. If all went well, Emma was welcome to stay with us. Otherwise, other options would be explored, those of which are unknown to me. Emma did not do well all through July. Her boyfriend drove over to visit her, to my dismay. I tried to make him leave, but it caused some backlash, so I figured I would set visitation, then wean her time from him more and more. Then I caught her smoking one of those electronic cigarettes twice. She would never do any of the work asked, would talk back, steal food, break things, and would be rude to my children. All of that could be dealt with. I knew that once school came around, she needed to be more disciplined. So one morning we got into an argument because I told her I was chaining up the fridge and that she better act right or else she will be forced to scavenge for her food around the farm and cook it herself. If she doesn't want to contribute, she gets nothing the household has worked for. She was livid, throwing stuff, stomping her feet, making rude gestures. My son and I left to go tend to the animals, morning duties, and told her that she better catch up to get some chicken tonight or start preparing to pick some vegetables for herself. After an hour of work, I sent my son back home to get me a change of pants due to a fall. He came back asking me if Dad had taken my car. We quickly realized Emma had stolen my car. Not only that, but she did not have a license, only a permit. I did what any reasonable person would do in this situation and call the police. They found her 2 hours later and arrested her, saying she was to be charged with misdemeanor for driving without a license and, I believe, joyriding. My brother and his wife are furious with me. They told me she steals our cars all the time and always brings them back, which would have been good information for me to know beforehand. My family is siding with them that calling the police when knowing she would be arrested was an a-hole move. Just to tack this on, so I don't have to reiterate this to everyone who comments about the fridge bit, that was more or less an empty threat. If it came to it, though, I can't say I would have totally ruled that out as crossing the line. Also, about stealing food. Part of what I do is I bake and sell what I make at a farmer's market nearby. She would take cakes, pies, and other pastries I would make and eat them herself. I would make some little versions for the kids, but she would take the whole portion meant for sale and eat it herself and throw out the extra. She would throw away 3/4 of a cake. Please note, we live on a vegetable farm. She has access to vegetables and fruit. When I say scavenge, I mean go outside and pick something to eat and cook. I'm not denying her food. NTA. There needs to be an end to this absurdity. She won't get it until she faces consequences outside of the home. To begin with, this scenario seemed bleak. Your acceptance of the agreement surprises me. NTA, she stole your car. She assaulted your son. I don't know how I feel about chaining up the fridge. That seems borderline abusive, but as for everything else, I'm on your side. Lock her up. She was eating food meant for resale? She was interfering with your money? Throw her into a juvie and get rid of the key. You do not mess with somebody's bag like that. NTA at all. She steals our cars all the time and always brings them back. Well, now we know where she learned all this from. If they expected you, her aunt, to just brush off her stealing your car, imagine what they let her get away with.